What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as you tune in and you check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to talk about recent statements that Charles Barkley made when he went. Basically, he went at Colin Cowherd, right, and was telling Colin Cowherd to shut up. So now, my thing is, what I see with what's going on with Charles Barkley, was Kenny Smith, Shaq, and the guy Ernie, is that show that comes from TNT is really different from like anything else that you see on ESPN, right? And the difference between that show is like you get an more of an honest take from Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal and Kenny Smith too. Like all those guys, man, you get a different, honest take. So, and it's not like that with the rest of with like ESPN, like the rest of those guys out there. You don't. It's more like it's they have more of an agenda when it comes to ESPN, and that and so with them bringing over Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and all them, they brought them over, in my opinion, more so to silence them and control them than to have them go to another network. If Charles Barkley and that show would have went to another network, then they would have took their ratings over there to whatever. Say for instance, if that show had went to Fox, they would have took their ratings over there to Fox, which they was with TNT. They would have went to Fox, and then that would have been more competition for them. But you bring them over to you bring them over to ESPN, and you can kind of control them, by sometimes not like they're not on TV as much as as they should be. So it was more so, in my opinion, about control than it was anything. Like ESPN was not interested in capitalizing on the popularity of that show. They wanted to control the narrative. And so what better way to control the narrative than to bring them over to the network and just limit their access? That's basically what's happening, right? So let me play though what Charles Barkley had to say, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give more of my reaction.
Look at this camera right here.
Yes.
Okay, there's some fools at home, or on the internet. They're at home now, saying that we were talking bad about the players, so they made us work less. Shut the hell up. Shut the hell up. This is already scheduled.
Nice catch, by the way.
Because you know, I really
know.
Do you realize how scheduled?
Chuck,
come on, man. These guys are like, well, these guys, they don't put them on the shelf because they don't want them on TV. Man, y'all need to shut the hell up. This was already planned months and months ago. All I said was, I would like to work more. But can I look at this camera right here?
Right, so let me say this, right? Charles Barkley, before they started, doing those shows for ESPN, Charles Barkley said he don't want them to work him like they working like Stephen A. Smith. Like Stephen A. Smith be on the morning, then he'll be in the afternoon, then the noon, then he'll be in the evening. So he didn't want to work like that. He felt like, at his age, it wasn't cool for him. He didn't feel like he had to work like that. So that's what Charles Barkley was pushing back against before he even started, right? But the thing is, with Charles Barkley, he also, when you get with Charles Barkley and all those guys, you're going to get somebody who is, like I said, they're going to give you their honest take on how they feel about whatever athlete, right? So if the athlete is stinking out there, if he's stinking up the court, then that those guys are going to say you stinking up the court. They probably going to say it in a respectful manner, but that's just what they're going to do. They're going to let you know. And I think that's refreshing, especially for the fans, because don't tell us that we're watching a excellent performance when we know what we see. Our eyes don't see that, right? And so that's why people, I think, like Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, the guy Ernie, and Shaq, because those guys, they just give it to you straight up. Then on top of that, like their chemistry is the chemistry with those guys is better than anything else that ESPN have. I don't know like any other lineup that ESPN have where chemistry can come close to touching what's going on with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and those guys. Like I'm trying to think of a show. They don't have that. It all just seems like fake and phony on the rest of their shows, whereas though you got these guys up there. It's like having some guys just like sitting around, a bunch of friends just sitting around watching the game and talking about the game. You know, it's not like that on the rest of the shows. And ESPN don't care. That's how I know that, you know, like they just wanted this show so they can just kind of like keep kind of close tabs on this, right? You know, and control it. They had a thing about what they say, what was it called? Capture, you know, like they were capture, like some people would like buy a story and then kill the story so the word don't get out. Like say if you had some information on somebody, right? And they would pose as somebody who was interested in getting your story out. They would pay you for the rights to the story. And then once you sold them the story, they had the rights, then they just would shelf it. And so you couldn't say anything about it because you don't own the rights anymore. And so that's called capture and kill. And so basically, in my opinion, that's what they did with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and those guys, right? If ESPN was really concerned about ratings, then they would have had these guys, or not just ratings, but just like putting something authentic out there. They not, you know, they more so concerned about controlling the narrative than they are putting anything authentic out there. And so the fans get cheated. You know, we don't get to see anything authentic, you know, like from the major networks. That's why, you know, on these platforms, you know, people have their own independent platforms. They're gonna come out and tell you what they feel. But then even on the independent platforms, you can be what do they call it, shadow banned, right? You know, so you can only get but so big. And what happens is you're they still control the narrative. Like so ESPN still has a monopoly on controlling the narrative. You know, they got Shaq and Kenny and Charles Barkley under their thumb. And they can control the narrative, man. It's just, to me, you know, people just had to be aware of that, you know. And but look, what else? Something else he said on there that I wanna address. Let me play this again because it was another point I wanted to address.
Look at this camera right here.
Yes.
Okay, there's some fools at home, or on the internet. They're at home now, saying that we were talking bad about the players, so they made us work less. Shut the hell up. Shut the hell up. This is already scheduled.
Nice catch, by the way.
Because you know what, I really
know.
Do you realize how smart you are?
Chuck,
come on, man. These guys are like, well, you know, these guys, they don't put them on the shelf because they don't want them on TV. Man, y'all need to shut the hell up. This was already planned months and months ago. All I said was, I would like to work more.
Yeah, so I don't know if I talked about it, but he did say, like, as far as like talking bad about the players, right? And it is, man, you know, like I said, if Shaq say that, you know, you stinking up the court, or if Charles Barkley say you stinking up the court, then you stinking up the court. It's just that chemistry that these guys have that ESPN don't care about. And I think that should be an example right there of what ESPN is really about. They don't care about like putting out something authentic or putting out something that is real. They just want to control the narrative, you know. And so I don't know what, you know, and by them just having so much control when it comes to the basketball, the media and what goes out about basketball, it's gonna be hard to get the truth from anybody except for, like I said, more of these independent people out here who's doing it, you know, on their own. But the mainstream media, man, they putting out what they want you to hear. They putting out what they want you to see, and then you know, you don't really get to form your own opinion. You have to basically, you know, you going with what they say. So, like I said, but thankfully, I don't really watch ESPN that much. You know, I like watching Charles Barkley and those guys and Ernie because, like I said, they keep it real. But I don't, I don't really watch ESPN. I don't watch Stephen A. Smith. If he have a hot take and it goes viral or something like that, then it catch everybody attention. Then I'll, you know. But as far as watching those guys, man, it's just like if you're in a barbershop and you talking to some people, man, and you know that one guy is just saying stuff just to be saying it. You kind of avoid talking to this guy. You don't say, I'm not talking. I ain't mess with this guy, man. He just throwing stuff against the wall, man. Just, talking just so people, nothing really of any substance, right? So that's how I feel about ESPN. I don't really watch ESPN, so that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm gonna check y'all out in the next video. Peace.